Here we are. We're at the Jerusalem City Hall, on one of the most famous streets, Jaffa Street, where among other things there's a free piano that's available in a few different public places here in Jerusalem and other places, which is part of the explanation I'm going to give. This is of course a courtyard here, where it's basically a park with a beautiful place to sit over there, lit in trees. There's water fountains everywhere, including right over here, and a great surprise that there's even water fountains for dogs. Now, this might be something that people would expect to see, but believe me, this isn't understood, as one would say. This isn't something you can take for granted, that in public places, especially places that are as ancient as Jerusalem and yet as modern as the City Hall, and as diverse as one can see by the video I'm taking of the amount of different kinds of people that are around here. This is a very, very symbolic place. It wasn't picked by random for the continuation of this documentary of All Lives Matter. So of course the question we're asking is, which lives matter? Of course the answer is all lives matter, but the question is, in reality, somehow there's still some kind of arbitration, some kind of manipulation, that some lives matter more than others. There's places where you can hire people for $1 a day or less, and they'll be willing to sacrifice or risk their lives in order to perform whatever task it is, in order to send money home for their family, because obviously if they're risking their lives, if it's a suicide mission, whether intentionally or not, obviously the money isn't going to be spent by the person earning the money, and whether it's for $1 or $1 million, whether it's going to war, whether it's soldiers for hire, or whether it's other dangerous jobs, whether it's people raising their children to be suicide bombers or other kind of freedom fighters. And I'm not judging at the moment, I'm just saying that the fact that all lives matter, it's not a given. And it's not a given that they all matter equally, as we know, which is the tragedy. So at this place, the reason why this is such a symbolic place for that question, besides the incredible diversity that's here, I mean, the same piano that just before there was a modern Orthodox Jewish boy, now there are Muslim women from modern, which I'm not trying to expose, but from modern as far as their clothing to traditional and everything in between. This is the place. There are Africans, North Africans, South Africans, Middle Africans of many different faiths and connections. There are Hebrew Africans, and there are Christian Africans, there are Muslim Africans here. There are people from all faiths and all backgrounds, and the irony is, why am I saying that this is the symbolic place? Because without arguing, when did it all start and where did everything start? At least from the Abrahamic faiths, what we also call as the monotheistic faiths, which include, of course, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism in no particular order. It all started here. According to many others, it also all started here. When I say here, meaning Jerusalem. And not too far from here, at the end of this road that we're on, is the old city of Jerusalem, which is where the Temple Mount is, where I was earlier today. And according to certain traditions, that's where the cornerstone, the fountain stone, the birthing stone, the spring of where the world was created from, came from the stone Even HaShtiyah, the thirst-quenching stone, is on the Temple Mount. So why is this the most sought-after place? And why is all the conflict here? Because from the beginning, the question was, which lives matter? I mean, however you want to look at creation, according to the tradition, of course, the Garden of Eden was meant to be vegan. The future Garden of Eden is going to be vegan. And the idea of the creator for the creation was meant to be vegan. Or at least do no harm. Not vegan where you get to do harm, vegan where you do no harm. It had nothing to do with being vegan because there was no alternative. In other words, there wasn't the alternative to eat flesh or kill animals because it was never permitted in the first place. So it all starts here because over time, whether it was Cain and Abel, whether it was Adam himself, whether it was Eve, depending on how you want to look at who did what sin when. And of course, this is all metaphorical, symbolic, whatever you want to call it, because we all make the same decisions every single day. We've been taught through efforts of speciesism and other kinds of collateral damage, or issues of survival and scarcity and survival of the fittest. We've been taught that yes, there are times when some lives matter more than others. Some people go to war and some people don't. Some people are willing to kill and other people are willing to be killed. To protect ideals, to protect lives, other lives. So it's not a new question. Of course, in a perfect world, all lives should matter, and all lives do matter, and no one should matter more than the other, and it doesn't matter whether it's an ant or a human or something edible or not, whether it's predatory or otherwise, because in a perfect world where there's peace and harmony, there would be no predators. So yes, people would live in peace and harmony, there would be loving energy all the time, infinite love and gratitude. So what went wrong? What went wrong? Well, if we want to take the traditional explanation of what went wrong, there's actually the choice given to man. When you want to say man meaning mankind, whether you want to say man meaning the male species, whether you want to say man meaning Adam, the point is, unlike the rest of creation, which seems to go more or less with instinct, with a certain ingrained sense of what's right and wrong, at least for them, humans have the ability to rationalize and overcome instinct and overcome whatever our drive is through rationalization. I would say logic, but it's not logic. It's rationalization, which means it's a very subjective logic. We can be swayed, we can be tempted, we can be convinced, we can be blackmailed, and we can be blindsided, and we can be brainwashed, and we can be bribed. Of course, not all of us. It does exist in the human condition. And when it exists in the human condition, it means that we all have frailties and imperfections. Wasn't the word I was looking for, which is why I had a minor pause there. But I also wanted to take a new video of the new person at the piano keyboard, which reminds me of another element of the song, of the question, which lives matter. The famous Tug of War album by Paul McCartney, where he teamed up with Stevie Wonder and sang the song Ebony and Ivory. And that's been for me a very, very, very historical and also anthem-like song and reminds us, of course, here we are with the piano keyboard. We just saw it with our own 2 eyes, the video that I'm taking live that has not been deep faked, photoshopped or otherwise. At the same piano here at Jerusalem's City Hall, which is one of the most contested places in the world from the beginning of time. Probably more blood has been spilt, more people have killed, more regimes have changed on this particular city than anywhere else, I think, in the history of mankind. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I don't mean to rewrite history. I'm just saying I don't know if too many cities have had more controversy in them and over them than this city. That's what I really meant to say. So feel free to correct me. I'm open for corrections. I always like to learn more. So it's just amazing what we see flying by. I haven't even made commentary on all the different people walking by or all the different vehicles going by, but there have been emergency vehicles that are manned by volunteer Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jews, which very few people realize is an unofficial response to the draft dodging issue of the secular versus religious in Israel among the Jewish people. And of course it subdivides into other sectors also. But the controversy over why do certain people serve the public and others don't. And I'm happy to say that I took part in the negotiations of having that kind of public service or national service of being first responders recognized by the then finance minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was then finance minister. And although the government accepted the idea, the right-wing ultra-Orthodox parties didn't, because the whole point was they don't recognize nationality. They'll still serve the people but not the government. I don't want to get into those politics either, but again, it's which lives matter. So you'll see people that'll risk their lives, they'll desecrate the Sabbath, which is the only thing you're allowed to do it for, which is to save a life. They will do it to save another person, whether it's a Jew, Christian, Orthodox, Muslim, but not for the name of the state. And again, I don't want to get into the politics, but the politics run really deep here. So now, as I showed the picture before, there's now Orthodox Jewish young women playing the same piano that's here. That people come and go not realizing, who've touched the keys before, and it's not that they should realize or care, but it's just amazing how music can bring people together. So Ebony and Ivory live together in perfect harmony, side by side on my piano keyboard. Oh Lord, why don't we? That was Ebony and Ivory by Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder, and I see it live here. So to say after 40 years-ish of that question, which is roughly when when that album came out, Tug of War, and the Stevie Wonder collaboration on Ebony and Ivory came out, I've been on this quest, asking this question of which lives matter, specifically for 45 years, almost to the day. Well, not to the day, but close to it. 45 years. I've been wondering it my whole life because it was ingrained in me that not all lives matter equally, even though it's wrong. And here we are now in the same city center that I've been to many times through my life, at very pinnacle parts of my life. I was here when I was 8 years old as a vegetarian, when I first became an animal activist and started asking the question, and the vegan and vegetarian choices were slim and far and few between. Very few people knew what it was. I was here again as a teenager for high school and university and other secondary studies in order to try to build a better world and build bridges and learn to teach communication and humanity. And then nobody knew what vegan or vegetarian was either. It was very hard. Now I can walk up and down the street, and like I say, first of all, there is unity. Unofficially, there's unity. There's people getting along, riding the same light rail train. You'll have every mixed population in there, and I mean that in a good way. You'll see the emergency vehicles going up and down the street, and I say that not because there's emergencies going on, but because it's closed to regular traffic. So it's a pedestrian walkway, only to emergency and public vehicles, so yes, you have to be careful. It's an amazing thoroughfare of electric or other non-regulated vehicles, and of course the most amazing flow of people walking through here on a daily basis, Sabbath included, where the traffic is much less because public transportation stops while emergency vehicles continue. So looking at the main street, as one can see from a distance, I'm not highlighting it, but just a cross section of populations to walk through, where there's more modestly dressed women, and of course more contemporarily dressed women. There's men of all shapes and size and ages. There's people in wheelchairs because yes, this is a wheelchair friendly area, more or less. There are people with all sorts of other interesting vehicles. I'm sure during the time that we sit here, you'll see people zooming by on electric scooters or non-electric scooters, on electric bicycles, non-electric bicycles, all sorts of electric small vehicles that should but don't require licenses. And you'll see the most amazing cross-culture, cross-section of people flying through here. Just amazing. So all lives matter. Back here in this place, man was given the choice to make that decision. And of course he failed. He failed once, he failed twice, he failed many times. Whether you want to say man is mankind or man is man, meaning the male species, whether you want to call it man as far as Adam, we're given the choice to relive our past, to correct our mistakes, or to move on and do better. So it applies to everyone, man and woman, of all shapes and sizes. And I was going to say that now walking up and down this Jaffa Street, it's amazing the amount of choices that are available, vegan and otherwise, healthy and otherwise. Just 3 years ago. Sorry that I'm shaking and my voice is cracking, but I'm getting emotional. Because just 3 years ago I came here try to spread the word of a better way. Try to take the Plant Pure Nations and Plant Pure Communities message of building pods and taking the restaurant campaign, and I went to restaurants and other establishments alike, from 5-star hotels where it's $1,000 a night to catering establishments, and all this is recorded. You can check it out because I documented everything. But on the street alone, I literally had to lay down on the railroad tracks of the same light rail that you see going here. I had to lay down on the railroad tracks just to motivate people to stop and to take notice. I was giving them free food, free, healthy, delicious, vegan food, but it took lying down on the tracks to motivate people to stop. And on the same street, in the same locations, well, not in the exact same location because one of them became a clothing store, but in the same locations around another place where I've worked, there's vegan options left, right, and center. Other place where I visited, vegan options coming out of people's wazoo. You can't even keep track of their choice. They don't even realize how many vegan choices they have. And the transformation has happened. So all lives matter. That's the answer. Everybody knows it. And we're all getting there. And we're all finding ways to apply that. But how did it get to the point where not all lives mattered, where we made judgment? Well, given the choice in the first place, or posing the question in the very first place, which one can ask was theoretical, was philosophical, was hypothetical, but it was posed. Once the question's asked, then the different sides have to be weighed. If I were to ask you, whoever you are listening to this right now, are you going to tell me that all lives matter equally? Well, there are criminals and there are saints. There are murderers and rapists out there and horrible people out there that we know. And there are people that risk their lives to help others. So how can we say that all lives matter? Well, again, in potential and in a perfect world, all lives matter. I would say that the criminals of today, yes, there are many. And of course, there's even more if we give everyone a vote, because everyone is a criminal to somebody else, one way or another. And of course, not everyone, but enough people are. But objectively, we wouldn't say that. Objectively, we wouldn't say that. Objectively, we would say some people's lives matter more only because of crimes or actions they've done or good deeds that they've done. And other people matter less because there's a scoring system. But in raw potential, we all deserve the same chances. And I would argue that anyone making the wrong decision today wasn't given a fair chance to beginning, because whoever did make that first choice or decision or judgment, whoever asked the first question was the one who put it out there. My argument is that for the first time since the creation of whatever, since the first time of the creation of mankind, of humanity, of this world, we actually have free will and we actually have the choice to make a good decision. So I can't on behalf of other people forgive everyone, but on behalf of myself I do. Only if they're willing to repent, and part of repentance according to our tradition is confession, is regret, and it's making sure to never do it again. And of course, it's only for as long as we can, but it's making that effort. We're in the month of Elul, and according to the Jewish lunar calendar, or at least according to the biblical lunar calendar, because eventually in this talk I'm going to take issue with the term Jewish. And forgive me all of those who are already wondering, how the hell am I going to do that, being who I am and everything I've represented? But if you're patient enough, you'll understand and you'll get it. I apologize to all those who don't speak English and who would like to listen to this. If you'd like this in Hebrew or other languages that you think I speak or know that I speak, if you'd like this translated by AI that I have, that it can translate it to any language you'd like, just ask. So forgive me. I have to put it in the comments after. But the thing is, we've been told that there's such thing as scarcity. We've been led to believe through the primitive way of seeing things in the past that there's scarcity. And once there's such thing as scarcity in the world, then your survival is at risk vis-a-vis someone else's survival. Because if there's only enough food to go around for less than everyone out there, then someone has to kill someone else to take it. And if not, you're going to cause someone else to die by taking it. So the scarcity mentality, which is fake, and is manufactured, it is arbitrated, it is manipulated, it is imposed upon us to justify all the wrongs that have been done since the birth of humanity. And there were times of scarcity, don't take me wrong. I mean, there are places in the world where food is scarce. There are places in the world where resources are scarce, and some of it is actually even from natural causes. But it wasn't meant to be that way, and a perfect world isn't like that. So now that there is no scarcity in reality, that there's more being thrown away every day than what it takes to feed or to satisfy everybody on this planet, we have to fix that. So yes, we've started PCRM, which is not the original PCRM, which is Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, but for everyone who isn't a doctor and who wants to do more than just medicine, we've started the People's Committee for Responsible Management. Check out our website, pcrm.xyz or XYZ if you don't speak English. And it explains, you can also check out our Facebook page, PCRM, or People's Committee for Responsible Management. There's our Facebook page, and there's many other ways of finding us. But we are trying to give the power back to the people in order to save humanity and save the planet. This is a non-violent, non-political, non-controversial, should be non-controversial platform, because we are doing this while governments are trying to figure out what to do. We're just going to do it on our own. It's mostly food-based, and extension from that, of course, it's the rest of sustainable living, because the food has to be sustainable. Everything has to be sustainable. By the definition of the word sustainable, it means that if it's not sustainable, we shouldn't be doing it. If we want any future for anyone, I happen to already be a grandfather, I'm proud to say, so I do care also about my children, also about my grandchildren, so that was a non-proper grammatical application there. We don't say also twice like that. It's not an English expression that I just used. I apologize. But yes, I care about the future. For as long as I'm alive, and if I keep up with this diet and lifestyle, I should live much longer than I'd like to right now. So I'd like there to be a better world for me to live in. That's been my whole motivation from day one. Every single thing I've ever done was to make the world a better place so that I'd have a better world to live in. It's been selfish at the same time as it's been selfless, because it has never been at the expense of anyone else or instead of anyone else. It's been to share with everyone else, because yes, the cries of others bother me. They don't give me peace. So here we are at the first time in history where there's enough out there if we just know how to use the resource that's readily available. Remember, I forget the name of the doctor, but there was a prominent plant-based doctor that was speaking about the riots that happened wherever he was living, I forgot where, and the looting. And I said the amazing thing about being plant-based is even after looting that happens in places, which I'm not taking sides, not justifying or condemning, I can understand without justifying or condoning. I can understand both sides, as wrong as it is. Isolated, I can understand all sides. But he was commenting that the beauty about being plant-based is even after looting, they go after the stuff that plant-based people don't want anyhow. The fruits and vegetables, the grains, the legumes, the cheap stuff is there. So if you know how to eat well, if you know how to eat properly, there's never going to be a shortage, because the land provides. I've been living mostly for the last couple of weeks off of public fig trees that nobody seems to care about, that are abundant, that are fruitful, that are healthy, and that with the little that I eat, 3 to 4 figs a day have been enough to sustain me, with a little bit of water here and there, of course, and whatever else I'd supplement it with, which sometimes has been nothing. So not to get off course, the whole question is which lives matter? And the answer is, of course, all lives matter. We have an opportunity for the first time ever to correct those wrongs. I'm here in Jerusalem, as I said, in the most incredible point of intersection of all life. Of course, most life, not all life, but representations of life. And my father, the Dr. Goldstein, the new Dr. Goldstein, who became a doctor in order to write a book that would have the name doctor put on it to give him the credibility of a person who's not just saying it, but he wrote a book to explain what went wrong with the Balfour Declaration. I'm bringing that as an example because on so many levels, in so many ways, it's the root cause, an example of the root cause of all what's wrong in the world today. But of course, it's an example of it, because who was Lord Balfour? Who the heck gave him the right to decide the fate and the future of this land and the Middle East on a whole, which at that time didn't have boundaries or borders or country names, and all the countries in the Middle East name now, even if they existed in the past and there are different names or cultures, they are not the boundaries that exist today. So just accept that as a fact. I'm not saying that people don't have a right to exist, but when the Turkish Empire, when the Ottoman Empire was in the Middle East, there was no Iran and Iraq. There was no separate country of Turkey, a little small place next to Lebanon. There was no Lebanon, there was no Israel. There's no Jordan, there's no Syria. There are historical and biblical accounts of a country named the other side of the Jordan River. There are biblical accounts of a country named Egypt. And there were empires, but the map that exists today is a relatively new concoction. Now, part of the dirtiest secret that people don't know, unless you read my father's 773 pages that he explains this, it's basically that Balfour double-dealed. They didn't expect there to be so many survivors of World War II and so many people claiming the rights of the deals that Lord Balfour promised to the British, to the Muslims and to different groups of Muslims, to the Jordanian, to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, and to other kings and sheikhs and chiefs. And here we are looking, there are Filipino, whether they're tourists or whether they're foreign workers, either way, they're part of the culture here, an integral part of the culture here, also inspired and innovated by Bibi Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, when he was finance minister, bringing foreign workers to replace the Palestinian foreign workers that were starting the Intifada, the first Intifada, or continuing the first Intifada, became a labor crisis here. The first Intifada, by the way, in case people don't know, was actually a labor strike. It was a labor strike that shut down the whole country in order to demonstrate that they have the power to do so. It led then to bringing foreign workers. It became an economic crisis in Israel because at least the Palestinians on a certain level would spend the money within the certain geographic boundary of Israel more than foreign workers would send their money back home, which again, which lives matter? Whoever works cheapest, they matter the most. I mean, sad but true. So back to Lord Balfour. So he double-dealed. Very simply promised the same land to the Palestinians and the same, which didn't exist. He promised the same, but to different people who, because the British called the land Palestine, anyone who had lived here before, be Palestinian. My mother, God rest her soul, she was born in the country of the British Mandate of Palestine before the States, so she too was a Palestinian who left the country and came back to the new state of Israel after it was formed. So she was a new immigrant, born in Tel Aviv in Palestine, who became a new immigrant to the new state of Israel. Now, again, I'm not claiming rights more than anyone else. I'm just explaining the irony and the paradox of everything. And it's all politics. So, on a certain level, it's only Lord Balfour and the whole Balfour Declaration and the whole double dealing that didn't make sense and couldn't work, that caused all the problems, the original political problems in the Middle East. As far as the religious conflicts, those go way back. And again, it's a question of which lives matter. If you look at the biblical story of Abraham, well, he had two sons. He did have a son, Ishmael, and he did have a son, Isaac. And Ishmael was his firstborn, but according to the versions of the story that say that the land was not promised to Ishmael, well, there you go. Ishmael did get a lot of other land, which should be compensation, but I'm not getting into that argument. There's enough land and food and resources to go around for everyone. It's the politicians who are creating scarcity. Previous videos I made, in fact last week if I'm not mistaken, that I made showing the seeming desert, the emptiness of land not far from here. This is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, where people live in hovels, people live in holes in the ground. I've lived, I've spent, I still do, and I've been in the past, spent in the craziest places that are called apartments, and yet 20 kilometers from here, less than 20 miles from here, and I'm saying that because 20 miles will take you 32 kilometers, but I'm saying with not a very far trek from here, there's empty lands. Empty lands because it's in dispute, empty lands because different people have claims, empty lands because it's arbitrated that way for security zones. But there's a lot of empty land, a lot more empty land than occupied land in this tiny country called Israel. And it is insane. And this applies to the whole world. The whole world we've created prisons, penal colonies called cities, where people have to live in order to survive, where people have to work in to feed the people who have to live in order to create a class society and a caste society that makes it that no one can live well, because the better off have to live and be served with the less well off. Less well off have to work there as slaves because it's the only place to get a paying job. Remember, as a child, we went on a class trip to Washington, D.C. in 8th grade, I think it was, from Toronto. And it was insane to see the difference between during the day Washington, when the politicians and the wealthier were around, at least to work, and at night when all the wealthier went to Maryland at the time and left the working class to be in D.C., just leaving the insane amount of crime. It was overt. I remember seeing when we parked our school bus or our chartered bus for our class trip to go somewhere, and we witnessed in front of us a car getting its wheels and tires stolen right in front of us. Got jacked up, the wheels and tires being stolen. I didn't say anything, we didn't say anything, because I don't think any of us, being from Toronto and being from the relatively closed communities that we were all from, ever saw this in Toronto. But I was sure people were just changing their tires, but when they ran off and didn't come back, it was made abundantly clear to us, I don't remember by whom, that no, that's a regular thing. You park a car, the wheels get stolen, and nobody does anything about it because it's a petty crime. So all lives matter, but not yet, because we've set things up where some matter more because some people are willing to and some people have to work for minimum wage and less. I mean, with all due respect, I have been doing for the last several years, at least 3 years, and some would argue for the last 10 years, I've been working below minimum wage, way below minimum wage, in fact, below minimum wage even for some third world countries probably. Part by principle, part by choice, and part by necessity, but mostly to prove that the way things are set up and designed and the way things have been manipulated and manufactured and orchestrated is completely unfair and wrong. And anyhow, this is a bigger part of the story and I don't want to get sidetracked. I might pack up and move to a different location that I've been talking for 33 minutes. But it all started here. It all starts here. And it's time for it to change. It's time for it to change because I touched on the Jewish question, which is something I've been very discreet about talking about because we have to be careful how and where we talk about it. But the whole concept of turning the state of Israel into a Jewish state, I'm holding my breath before I go on to say I think that in itself was one of the most racist things that has been self-inflicted, but I think that was the number one root cause of all evil, was turning the state of Israel, or the land of Israel, into the Jewish state. Now, I'm not saying that it should not only be for the people of Israel, but I think defining who's a Jew, what's a Jew, who can be a Jew, who can become a Jew, who's defined as a Jew, who's allowed to be a Jew, why would one want to be a Jew, as the whole political issue that goes around this tiny little piece of land that's become an infighting issue at least as big as it's been an external issue. I mean, this goes back to the biblical days. This goes back to the biblical days after King Solomon. In the days of the Bible, when King Saul was picked as the first king, it was meant to bring peace to the world. And I'm not going to discuss the horrific wars that the Bible describes and the genocides that happened then, because I wasn't there. I can't defend what happened. I wasn't witness to what happened. But I will acknowledge the fact that yes, the way it talks in the Bible, in any of the Bibles, of how war can, should, and have been waged, I wouldn't agree to that today. So just be that on the record. But the point is, in the biblical accounts of what happened here in this land and in the area, I want to just remind ourselves that all of the wars that were in the name of the First and Old Testament, meaning pre-Judaism even. No, not pre-Judaism. Well, yeah, pre-Judaism, but not pre the children of Israel. But basically the birth of monotheism. I'm trying to be very careful here, both to be accurate and also be politically correct. Both to be correct and also be politically correct. But the point is, until King Saul, the only kings around were kings that didn't believe in God. At least not in one God. And because of that, it was a question of, who are we fighting for? Are we fighting for one God, meaning we're fighting for an absolute rule of truth. And again, I'm not saying who has it or who doesn't. Don't catch me on the words. But the notion was, until then there were idol worshippers. Until then, man decided who got to live and who died. Man decided who was sacrificed. Man decided everything. The idea behind the kingdom of Saul, and then the kingdom of David, and then the kingdom of Solomon, and then every kingdom thereafter, and then the next king that we're waiting for now, which is the Messiah, which I'll get into in a moment, how I interpret that. But basically, the concept wasn't to root out people and for a genocide, regardless of how it was done. The concept was to bring in an absolute truth, where there'd be absolute morals and absolute justice, where people wouldn't be manipulated and trafficked, and where people would only be ruled by one God who knew everything, the all-seeing eye, the all-hearing ear, and the hand that wrote everything down. Now today we can understand that. Today we can understand what that means. We're all being watched, we're all being recorded, we're all being tracked, and that you can't hide anywhere from anything. And even if you think you can, you probably can't. This is the one true God, however you want to define him. The singularity solution, the threat of AI, robots taking over the world, aren't going to do it in and amongst themselves. And I can explain that because, yes, I've lived that world and studied that and lectured about that. And that is my professional background. So when my father claims his PhD, not claims, my father has his PhD and doctorate in political science in order to write this book, I can take the same claim for the things that I talk about, on my own level at least. I don't know what's going on here, but it is a little bit interesting what's going on here. I'm just curious. I don't want to need anything, but I'm just curious as to what's going on here. Now, so moving right along to the hypothetical purist notion and explanation of what is the kingdom of God, and who decides and who defines that. I'm just trying to bring to the point that it was meant to be the one true set of justice, that the King of all kings, God who knows all, he will judge. Only he can judge. Bear in mind that this is not far from Jacques Fresco's concepts in the Venus Project, where AI will help man rule the world, since AI is the only system that can be objective if programmed right. Strangely enough, I agree and I believe it, and I concur, because I have used my algorithms and worked on algorithms with quantum intelligence called Qi, quantum intelligence, which has been proven that it can offer true and fair and honest objective judgment when it's given the concept of all lives matter, do no harm. In other words, there is an option today. It took until today, but there is an option today. So I'm going to be walking down the street now. Forgive the bumpiness, but I need to change the scenery. We're going to see more, experience more, change the scenery, and then I'll continue talking. Because this is supposed to be Saturday Night Live. It is. Normally I would start at 11. I don't even know what time it is, so I might have to start and stop again, or stop and start again. So the concept of the one true king and I'm not gonna judge or get political about who it was, but Saul wasn't the right one. He was replaced with King David, who didn't have the merit or wasn't chosen to build the temple, and King Solomon did, to bring a light unto the nations. I'm not defending him. I'm just trying to start off with the headline based on the biblical account before we can get into all the yes or no. Do we believe in it? Do we not believe in it? Do we agree or do we not agree? But the point is, that was the notion. And according to some texts and some notions, he did for a while. It was good for a while. Things were right for a while, and then they weren't. The point I wanted to get at was that in subsequent generations, as is taught and brought down in the books of Kings in the Bible, there was eventually a split between the people of Israel, between the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. Yeah. And that was the beginning of that first exile after the people had become a people. So that was the first exile. At that point, because what was considered righteous was in Judea, was in the biblical territory of Judea, and since the tribe of Judah historically and biblically is the lineage that is chosen as kings, and again, can and will and might things change, it's not up to me, but it can. But the point is, the kingdom of Judea was a symbol, one of 13 tribes. I'm saying 13 because we all talk about 12, but there's actually two ways of counting the 12 tribes. They're the 12 children of Jacob, of Israel, and one of them was Levi, another one was Joseph. Now later, when the land was apportioned, Joseph, as a reward for being the firstborn son to Rachel and Jacob's favorite, he got two portions through Ephraim and Manasseh. So the 12 tribes, from a heritage, from a historical, from a territorial, and from a political side within the land of Israel and the people of Israel, there were 12 tribes, as if to say 12 parties, one could say, because they were all separate, had different missions, different lands, different jobs, different commandments even on a certain level. And then the 13th tribe, which is the other child of Jacob, of Israel, as his name was changed when he fought the angel. The 13th child, which is not in order, but the one missing, is Levi, which is the priestly, it's where the priests come from, and the public servants, the Levites, they come from, which traditionally I am, from my father's side, a descendant of. And to be called a Jew, with the distinction of forgetting that I am from a tribe of Levi, is almost discriminatory. To take this land 3,000 years later, give or take, and to decide that the other 12 tribes of Israel do not belong here because this is a Jewish state. Unless you are Jewish, you cannot become a citizen here. You cannot stay here. You can be thrown out even if you're third generation. A dear friend of mine is being threatened. His whole community is being threatened with thrown out of the community, out of the state, because he's officially not recognized as being a Jew, despite the fact that nobody denies that he is a good citizen. The whole community is model citizens, model people, born in the land, serve the land, follow the rules of the land, are exemplary citizens, but because of a technicality, they are not allowed to stay. And a strange parallel thing, I've been through the same thing more than once myself, and when I tried to move back here 20 years ago roughly, we were denied entry because I couldn't prove my Jewishness either. Not enough according to the then criterion of the state. The loophole that let me stay was the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, my late mother was born here. So it gave me a different kind of right of return. Not a right of return, I was born a citizen of the land against my knowledge and against my will. So on my ID, my government issued ID, where it says nationality, which really means religion, I have asterisks because although they don't want to put that I'm a different religion, they will not acknowledge that I'm a Jew. Now, the interesting thing is that I in a strange way actually appreciate that, because it helps me focus and deal with the same issue that I'm mentioning, which is I don't want to be called a Jew. I cannot subscribe to and follow the rules that are meant for Jews, both because they don't apply to me and also because they don't work for me. I mean, part of that is, if we talk about the fact that the tribe of Judah is the tribe of kings, obviously not every Jew can be a king. In other words, there can only be one at a time. Now, there can be mayors, and there can be politicians of different levels, and there can be leaders on different levels, and there can be government donors and group leaders and NGOs and not-for-profits. You can be a leader without being the king, and there is hierarchy. And there is a notion that that is reserved for the tribe of Judah, whatever that means. Whether one can become a Judah, well, yes, there is that notion of conversion. Not notion, there is the process and concept of conversion. The question is, what does that mean? I'm wondering if it meant in the time of the Bible, when there was more than one recognized tribe within the 12 tribes. I'm wondering if people were allowed to pick which one they wanted to join, because I don't think it's only that one is able to convert to Judaism in the sense of being part of the tribe of Judah, but if one would answer what I was alluding to before, which is, yes, if you follow the rules and fulfill the obligations of what you need to be a good leader, you can be a leader. Anyone can be a king if you prove worthiness. That's the point, not through conquest, but through proving worthiness. And that is the point I'm trying to get to. I am like I said, from my father's side, Dr. Goldstein, my birthright, according to our tradition, is Levi. In this week's Torah reading, it expressly mentions that a Levi, has no part of the land. They are public servants, which is why I've never been able to avoid serving the public, whether it's been as a volunteer, as a community leader, or whatever it's been. Even when I don't want to be, I get pulled out of retirement. When I want to run companies, I am not successful in running them for profit, only running them for getting the message out and getting the mission accomplished, but not sustainably for a business, because I don't want to rule people. I don't want to own or dominate things. I want to teach by example. So I believe that the problem is, and I'm making this as a declaration, with a few weeks to go, just over 3 weeks to go until the Jewish New Year, which again, I shouldn't say Jewish, till the Israeli New Year. I'm going to try to fix that and correct myself. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Bible of Israel and the children of Israel, the New Year starts with the month of Tishrei. That is in just over 3 weeks. On the 7th of September is the first day. It starts at the 6th at night. We consider the Day of Judgment. That is the day that Adam was created according to our tradition, and it doesn't make a difference. But for the point of symbolism and for the point of focus and direction and intentions, it makes a big difference. And this is the time of repentance in our calendar, because it's upcoming the Day of Judgment. We get judged every year on the anniversary of the creation of Adam, which means that 6 days before that, according to just the symbolic tradition, which means 2.5 weeks from now is the beginning of the 6 days of creation, which means now is the time of chaos and confusion that came before that. Anybody witness any chaos and confusion? I do. So we have to wake up now. Our tradition tells us that the heralding of the Messiah, the heralding of the redemption, will most likely happen on a Saturday night. So I hereby declare that I'm announcing the redemption. I'm officially, unequivocally announcing the redemption. And how the heck do I have permission to do so? I have permission to do so because I can, because I am me. And what right does that give me? I'll explain in a minute. It's a very interesting area, as you can see, just by the cross-population of people walking around here. It's a place that when I was here as a student, I was warned against coming to. Bad influence, bad things. I don't know what's going on down there, but something's going on down there. There's macrame on trees here. Makara Shama. No one knows what's going on there, but it's attracting a lot of attention. Well, maybe it's the Messiah. I sure hope so, because anything else that garners this amount of attention is usually bad. So, I'm saying that I have the right, the nerve, the audacity, and whatever else you want to call it, to herald the Messiah because I believe it's within our control. It doesn't have to be universal for it to work. If the last few years, and especially 2020, the hindsight of 2020 has taught us anything, it's taught us that we can live in very different realities occupying the same space, and it doesn't have to be a contradiction. Meaning it doesn't have to be that your reality can't coexist with mine. They're total contradictions as far as explaining them, but not how they can coexist in the same space. I'm just going to flip around the camera because I'd like to see what's behind me. Nah. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up soon because I've been talking for an hour. But I'm explaining that the redemption, at least according to many opinions, many faiths, and according to the one I'm embracing, is something that you can bring upon yourself. And if it's good enough for you, if somebody else doesn't want the redemption, let them not have it. That's okay too. So I believe it's time when anyone can make the next positive choice. My whole life I've been working on this. The fact that you can pick up a smartphone, you can pick up a device, you can pick up whatever your personal assistant might be at any given time and say, hey Google, hey Siri, hey whoever the heck it is that you talk to, what can I do now to bring my redemption? What can I do now to bring a better world? They're saying there was a stabbing. They're saying there was a stabbing. Interesting. They're saying there was either an attempt of a terrorist attack or there was a stabbing. This is bizarre. I'm gonna move to a different angle. So, this is at the same time. So they're saying one guy was running, somebody stabbed him, and the guy took off. I have no idea what this is, if this is true, if this is real. This is the worst thing that's happened all day in the world. I can't say it's okay, but you know, I've heard worse, I've seen worse. I don't really want to hang around here because it can get messy. Not that I'm afraid or anything, just that I'd rather continue my talk and I don't want to get distracted by what's going on here. Now, this is a typical Saturday night in the heart of Jerusalem. So I just want to wrap up as we're getting really close to 1 hour mark and probably really close to me starting the next video. I just want to make it abundantly clear that if you have the ability to make choices that are easy enough that'll bring you the life that you dream of, a perfect life. By the way, this crocheting is just a street art decoration. If you have the ability to ask Google or do a search or ask a friend and how to do better, and if you want guidance, just ask me, and how your life can become the life of your choice and your dreams, and anyone that you care about you can bring into that, and the people that don't want to be part of it, they don't have to be, and you can still be friends and you can still coexist. You can still have a good life. If that's the truth, and that is, then I believe the redemption is here. So, on that happy note, I'm going to wrap this up so I can post it. And I'm wishing everyone that they can experience the same kind of redemption that I am trying to share with other people, because I'm sick and tired of trying to show it to people. The only thing that's holding up my own total and complete and absolute utter redemption is the fact that I'm too busy trying to help other people find theirs. So get on it, guys, so I can take a break and enjoy my life a little bit. Thank you.